He was lauded as the master of the waltz and the person who popularized classical music the most. My lifelong goal is to make classical music accessible to all people everywhere. However, André Rieu abruptly left the stage amidst the jubilation and cheers. The events of that day were a mystery to all. Mysteries of disease, hopelessness, and undisclosed secrets were all that lingered. However, the joy that is involved is always present alongside the grief. The tragic disappearance will finally have its reality revealed today. Even though he was at the height of his career in 2010, André Rieu had a major health crisis. The vestibular nerve in his inner ear was assaulted by a virus that he contracted. Being able to keep one's equilibrium is absolutely critical for violinists. The world around him spun due to his sickness. Cancellation of tours was necessary. Countless shows were cancelled. The once famous "I can" guy had to confess, "I can't." This time, a mental collapse manifested itself in this physical issue. André descended into a protracted condition of anarchy when he was 62 years old. He often felt lightheaded and lost while confined to his bed. "Just rest," doctors said. Many traditional treatments failed to hasten recovery. An Australian fan was the catalyst. Sending a letter to Rieu, this individual detailed how vestibular exercises helped them beat Lyme disease. Rieu decided to give it a go out of desperation. Over time, outcomes became apparent. There was a gradual easing of the unease. He steadied himself. He was able to stand up after being off stage for months. Starting out shaky, it steadily becomes more stable. A metaphorical rebirth occurred with Rieu's return, which was a professional landmark in and of itself. Nevertheless, lingering consequences persisted. The audience may have thought he was completely better, but in actuality, his equilibrium was precarious. Despite denials from his management in 2012 regarding relapse rumors, they did concede that his ears will remain a problem. They further cautioned that serious repercussions could ensue in the event that the sickness reappeared during a performance. By 2016, something else had happened. Ruud Merckx, who had been his trombonist for many years, died of a sudden cardiac arrest. André and his orchestra were devastated by the loss. News of Ruud Merckx's sleep death reached Rieu while he was touring in England. Ruud was a trombonist and a close friend of Rieu's. He abruptly cancelled his gigs in Nottingham, London, Birmingham, and Glasgow, due to the emotional trauma he was experiencing. Instead of a physical ailment, it was the intolerable anguish of loss this time. He described himself as a brother later on. Upon returning to the stage, the entire orchestra was overcome with grief, and their absence was profoundly felt. Even when hit hard by the virus this year, Rieu showed remarkable fortitude. He went on stage despite being quite sick and exhausted. Those closest to him realized that he was fighting illness while performing, even though he wore his trademark smile. Mexico City was the scene of yet another enormous obstacle in March 2024. His 6 sold-out shows in a row were all on the books. For a while, it was considered a career high point. The second performance was the turning point. The virus, time zone variations due to altitude, and general poor health all contributed to his decline. A rumor circulated that Rieu, backstage, was staggering in a fever, gasping for air, and completely disoriented. He contacted his wife Marjorie and moaned, "I never want an opening day like this again." Despite the immense pressure, the other 4 concerts proceeded as scheduled. There were about 40,000 people in the audience, and many of them were rather upset. The 125-member orchestra had to shorten their tour. The entire plan fell through, including the refunding of tickets and the rerouting of flights. Not only was Rieu's health at stake, but his reputation and the efficiency of his orchestra were also severely impacted. André Rieu's career went through a transitional stage following his health problem. The real deal about the excursions. Viewers have observed noticeable shifts in André's schedule since 2024. There are no longer any transcontinental tours. Slower and more tightly regulated performances are now limited to Europe. Sleep, rest, and health are André's priorities, not a heavy workload. This isn't an indication of desertion, rather it's a strategy for him to maintain a lasting connection to music. Pierre Rieu, his son, was the one who advocated for these changes. He assists his father in carrying on with his performances, as he avoids the weariness that cost him dearly in the past. The role of Pierre as tour manager has expanded. Regarding tour scheduling and health, he has a hand in every choice. Pierre watches his father closely throughout performances and asks, does he have enough strength to continue without risk, before every flight and concert? His power to act swiftly is unquestionable in the event of odd symptoms, exhaustion, vertigo, or difficulty breathing. There has been a dramatic change. After previously taking a back seat, André's health is now front and center. Physically, André has changed, but his performance approach has evolved as well. Over time, fewer of the intense poulas that need a lot of stamina emerged. They were replaced by slower waltz ballads and more delicate pieces, which gave the program some breathing room. Because André's music still had that familiar allure for the audience, they readily accepted this shift. However, it served as a means for him to save energy, guaranteeing that every concert was finished without beyond his limitations. The concerts in Maastricht in the summer of 2024 were a perfect reflection of this distinction. Backstage had altered, but tickets still sold out. New criteria seemed obligatory, going beyond the mild music and instruments, having oxygen tanks on hand, time to rest, and medical supervision available. It was meticulously documented down to the smallest detail, including when to drink water, how many encore numbers to allow, and whether or not to shake hands just after a performance. Pierre made sure his father would be safe by setting everything up. Whenever his father was sick, he would step up and take charge. But his job was never more clear than it is now. Off stage, he provides more than simply managerial support. He is a real safety net. This was demonstrated, for example, when André once invited his kid to join him on stage for the encore of Must. Pierre did not have vocal talent, but when he sang, the crowd went wild. It was a touching moment that brought the audience closer to the performers, and served as a symbol of the strong familial ties that accompany successful careers. Many people thought everything was okay during that cozy moment. The reality, however, was more complex. Day after day, strain continued to mount behind the scenes, and André's body started sending out warning signals: stress, weariness, and grave cautions. In 2012, Rieu's tours brought in millions of dollars as they spanned the world from Europe to the US, South America, and Asia. The Merrick performances became a yearly worldwide film event, and DVDs and CDs sold like hotcakes. However, the specter of disease never went away. Alongside that achievement, after realizing he was no longer unbeatable, André came clean about it. Every performance had its limitations, and his health was a constant reminder of it. Even nevertheless, Pierre persisted in increasing the sphere of his authority. He demanded medical personnel at every stop, negotiated additional time for the symphony to prepare, and began to think about what would happen if André could no longer keep up his intensity. Even if changes had been made behind the scenes, the excursion still appeared magnificent from the outside. More time for rest was accommodated by lengthening the intervals between tours. There were still more than 100 shows scheduled for 2016. That many people meant unpredictable travel conditions and tremendous emotional and mental stress. Behind the scenes of the show, there was a lot of weariness, but what the audience saw were lights, music, and laughing. While touring Europe, an event happened in Vienna. André took longer than normal breaks between parts at one performance. Pierre kept his distance and watched intently. Nothing out of the ordinary was noted by the audience, although André later confessed that he had felt lightheaded. That recollection stayed with him as he completed the program, serving as a constant reminder that no matter how meticulously one plans, risks would always be there. He began to scale back on the more strenuous performances after that. An increase in solo chances for orchestra members led to the introduction of much-needed intermissions. It was the kind act of a famous artist that the crowd appreciated. André saw it as a means to conserve energy for future performances. He did not, however, slow down in the conventional sense. Despite these modifications, the MT concerts in 2019 had record-breaking crowds. With thousands of people chanting in unison, he remained positioned at the center, violin in hand. That may have been the ideal climax for many people's stellar careers. André, though, decided to keep going, making last preparations for the tour. André Rieu had to abruptly cancel all of his 2020 concerts due to the epidemic. He remained off stage for the lengthiest stretch of his professional career at this time. During that time, we maintained contact with the orchestra and worked on our recording skills. Also, he got a chance to think about life outside of touring, which was a welcome change. A new source of energy was brought back with the relaxation of constraints, because they had missed live music too much. The crowds were bigger and more enthusiastic. André found that his connection with his audience was further highlighted by the emptiness caused by the pandemic. Not only did he feel the pure delight of performing, but he also felt the undeniable connection to his millions of fans that music continued to provide. Following this point on, the tours persisted, albeit with a different methodology. The timetable was more rationally structured. A trip was planned with great care in order to lessen anxiety. As a constant companion to his father, Pierre Rieu assumed the responsibilities of overseeing and modifying. Even though he was 75 years old, André Rieu still playing and released a commemorative DVD called El Sueño Continua to honor the occasion. Aspirations persist. The film, which recreated his career's best performances and included scenes never previously shown on film, as well as the celebratory scenes characteristic of mastery, was released in Spanish theaters in April 2025 in the Cine Yelmo. On top of that, Friedhof Square Mastery's summer music series continued as a yearly cultural tourism attraction. Nearly 150,000 people attended 12 outdoor nights of 20th Ice 25. There was a monetary as well as an aesthetic effect on the city's hotels, restaurants, and tourist services. The rush of tourists from all around the world was very beneficial to everyone. Because of this, the term re-economy was coined to describe the monetary impact that the concerts had. The worldwide tour schedule is likewise growing once more. Abu Dhabi, Cologne, and Frankfurt are just a few of the European and Middle Eastern cities that will play host to upcoming concerts in late 2025 and early 2026. Still, illness forced the postponement of several nights in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia, New Zealand. Even though André Rieu has been dealing with health challenges, his staff is reassuring that he is determined to overcome them and continue performing. To avoid any potential issues, fans are advised to purchase tickets through the official channels, and the official tour page will keep fans updated with the full concert itinerary. While having a chat, André and Pierre bring up the idea of planning the biggest ever world tour as a possible farewell. If this event does take place, for which no specifics have been released, it will push one's physical and mental limits to their limits, as well as the strength of the tie between a father and son. A component of the puzzle that few would imagine remains hidden behind the stage grins and glory. A fact that has its origins in André's difficult upbringing, and about which he seldom discusses even now. The hidden reality. André Rieu came into this world on October 1, 1949, into a household where rules and regulations were king. Out of 6 youngsters, he came third. Even while the orchestra revered his famous father André, he was extremely severe, and even brutal to his own family. No one ever laughed or felt loved in Rieu's childhood home. Only in the guise of rules and regulations could affection be felt. Rieu confessed, "My parents did not love me." His mother was quite rigid, and placed an importance on academic success at the expense of her son's emotional development. She thought it was silly and even annoying when kids used their imaginations. The family took exception when Rieu's professors complimented her artistic abilities without offering any constructive criticism. When he was 5 years old, things started to change. A young woman of 18 years old was Rieu's first violin teacher. She let him feel the music, rather than forcing or scolding him. Under her tutelage, he started to feel liberated with every chord, realizing the importance of art outside the confines of familial control. From that point on, music occupied his entire being. Rieu sought passion and resonance in every music, whereas other children persisted in practicing scales. However, his father quickly opposed this decision. Even though Rieu grew deeply attached to the waltz, his father thought it was pointless to play waltzes. "I didn't raise you for that," he yelled. This was more than just constructive criticism, it was an effort to quench his enthusiasm. Something else happened in 1968 that altered Rieu's life. Marjorie, who would go on to become his wife, was someone he met. There was strong resistance when he returned Marjorie to his home. His mom got so mad that she wanted her to go. Rieu vowed to herself that night that she would never return to her hometown. His family was still there, but they were nothing more than a facade to him. Even after Rieu got renowned, his parents still didn't go to any of his shows. Even if thousands of people cheered enthusiastically, the pain of losing his parents would never go away. He had previously admitted that he had sought solace in therapy for a long time after his childhood felt hollow. Rieu found solace and joy in playing the violin. He finally received the acknowledgement he had been denied by his family through it. Every performance he gave was a gateway to his personal emancipation. An essential turning moment was 1978. He felt stifled by conventional settings after years of orchestral participation, so he struck off on his own. This was not an attack on classical music, rather it was an attempt to popularize it by making it more accessible and engaging for the general audience. This choice paved the way for Rieu to become one of the most accomplished violinists and conductors in the world. We are all under the rule of the King of Waltz. In the beginning, André Rieu assembled a group of 12 young musicians and called them the Mustri Salon Orchestra. They had nothing more than passion and trust in music. They lacked fancy clothes and a grand stage. Outdoor weddings, community halls and modest obscure towns were the band's usual performance venues. Playing music for its own sake, unconcerned with popularity or critical praise, was the ultimate point of it all. Marjorie, his wife, was the focal point of everything. Behind the scenes, she oversaw schedules, handled commercial affairs, and even wrote arrangements for her husband, all without ever setting foot on stage. With her unassuming strength, Marjorie was there to back up every plan and make sure it was executed flawlessly. Sell more records. It wasn't wishful thinking, but rather a realistic plan for their future as a couple. When Rieu was hesitating about buying a rundown castle, Rieu formed the 12-piece Johann Strauss Orchestra in 1987. It wasn't about preserving traditional somnolence so much as it was about bringing music to more people. They created a free-spirited, happy environment by donning brightly colored clothing instead of black tailcoats. This vibe was definitely there for the debut on January 1, 1988. Audiences were very receptive, even when critics were not. Concert-goers were more than just spectators. They felt again that the music was theirs. In 1995, in the UEFA Champions League final in Vienna, things started to change dramatically. The orchestra from Rio de Janeiro took the pitch and performed the second waltz by Dmitri Shakovich. Unexpectedly, it was the result. The chanting of football supporters gave way to swaying and applauding in time with the music. As soon as the music started, the nervous energy of the sporting event faded away. The moment Ajax scored looked like it was going down in history books. Rieu and his orchestra remained at the top of the Dutch charts for 19 weeks in a row after that one night. It shattered barriers and opened up new markets around the world for classical music. Albums were sold in the millions. Rieu wasted no time in winning over fans in Australia, either. A performance in Melbourne that was much more successful than anticipated drew more than 38,000 spectators. Not only that, recorded products were also very successful. He was the face of 8 of the country's top 10 best-selling DVDs. Among classical musicians, Rieu emerged as one of the few who could compete with the likes of Pink and AC/DC in terms of popularity. Success, however, was not enough to make everyone happy. Not everyone was on board with his strategy. Criticizing the bright stage lights and costumes, one conductor even cynically referred to Rieu's concerts as musical pornography, asserting that art should not be linked with joy. But the crowd had other ideas. Rieu provided them with a comforting and meaningful experience. Waltz music brought tears to the eyes of many elderly folks as they danced with their loved ones. With us, you will not feel the solemn silence that alienates people. Rieu's statement echoes his intention to provide more than just concert tickets. It offers optimism and a sense of connection. There is definitely a lot more to come up with when discussing André Rieu's narrative. Post your impressions, opinions, or memories of him down below. If you want more people to see this film and learn about him, hit the like button and share it. Additionally, you can click on the videos that are shown on the screen to continue exploring more captivating stories. Lastly, if you don't want to miss a video, subscribe to the channel.